we are blessed to have once again State Representative Dave Maturen in our studios. Good morning, Dave.
Morning. Pleasure to be here.
Always great to have you here in the studios here at 95.3 WBCK. And I guess, well, first of all, every once in a while we like to acknowledge people who've done something extraordinary in our area and in our community, and we give you the chance to do that right off the bat.
I appreciate that. We're really, obviously the 63rd District's a pretty big district, and we have the Department of Education announcing that Laura Chang, a second grade teacher at Sunset Lake and Vicksburg Community Schools, has been selected as the 2018-2019 Teacher of the Year.
And that's kind of your stomping grounds over there in kind of the Vicksburg area, isn't it?
Right, yeah. I mean, all my kids went to the Vicksburg school system, and I live in Brady Township, which is part of the school district, and it's kind of neat. She's going to become an ex officio member of the State Board of Education for the next year, and she's in the running for the National Teacher of the Year.
Yeah, I heard something about, and that's fantastic too, and we like to mention those kind of things whenever we can. Heard something about the old paper mill in Vicksburg. There's some project to develop that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There's a huge effort in the way, I should say, to take that old mill and make it into a multi-use facility, brew pub, residential areas, concert areas, all sorts of good things happening. The land bank's been participating, the DEQ with a cleanup grant. There's obviously a lot of pollution there that happened over the years, and so it's really something that's pretty exciting. They're trying to take advantage of a bill that I was helpful in getting passed called the My Thrive bill in the legislature last year. So trying to put all little bits and pieces together to put together a roughly $50 million project there, and would certainly revitalize the village of Vicksburg by having that huge project, multi-use project, in place.
Is that the old Simpson mill?
Yep, the old Simpson Lee paper mill used to be the biggest employer in Vicksburg. But a fellow, Sue Moore and Tim Moore's son, very successful brew pub out in Seattle, wants to come back and help his old hometown out. So very, very pleased with that.
Very good. Tell us a little more about that Thrive legislation you were talking about.
Well, it's My Thrive, and it was intended to help developers when they look at a brownfield, which generally needs lots of cleanup material, lots of efforts involved to get it in place, and it's essentially allowing them to recapture a certain portion of taxes and income taxes paid to make up the difference between what a development really costs to do and what the in so many words the market value of that development is. Without it, you're looking at places like in Detroit, the old Hudson site has just been sitting there for decades and decades. Same thing with this. It's just it's a brownfield. They call them transformational brownfields. It was called several different names as it wound its way through the legislature. But essentially, it's taking big projects like this that would never have the opportunity to get off the ground and enabling a developer to come in and put something together that really revitalizes the area.
Mm-hmm. We heard a news story today about somebody who wants to introduce legislation in Lansing that would outlaw operations to reduce dog barking. And my thought was, boy, that doesn't sound like the most important issue in the world to me, just my opinion. And a lot of times, people are introducing laws in Lansing that, they don't have to do with building roads or keeping our water pure or whatever. And they help constituents out, and they're important to do. And I know that you've got some bills, that help homeowners. For instance, when they go to sell their home, if that home hasn't had an increase in assessment, tell us more about that.
Well, it's an exemption from the state real estate transfer tax that was put in place actually in Proposal A in 1994. And essentially, if you, in this case, if you buy a lot, build a home, and then say you're in the middle of a recession, you've lost value on that home, your biggest asset, now you have the privilege of paying a tax in addition to losing the value of your most precious asset you have, your home. So essentially my bill says if according to the state equalized value, if the state equalized value is less, when you sold it than when you bought it, then you don't pay the transfer tax. I think it's a simple equity thing. My legislation similarly passed last session. We just happened to not take into consideration that some folks just don't buy a home. They buy a lot and build a home. So this is going to take care of that inequity in the law. But essentially, it's only fair that if you're losing value, why should you have to pay a tax for the for the privilege of doing that? So.
Hard to believe that hasn't been addressed in the past quarter century.
Well, I think back when Proposal A passed, people thought that property values were going to go up forever. Who thought that they were going to ever decline? Well, they did. And, we've seen the swings on the east and west coast, but we've never seen a decline like this in the state of Michigan as long-lasting as it was. So something to recognize. You like to think you think of everything when you put a bill together and you put legislation and you make some certain assumptions. And in this case, the assumption that values would always increase was dead wrong. So.
And what's the status of that bill right now?
Well, it's gone through. It passed the House of Representatives, went through the Senate Finance Committee 4-2. So hopefully it's on the floor of the House, the floor of the Senate, and we'll get passed there and then move on to the governor's signature.
So who votes against this? Is it just political?
Well, I think the folks that voted against it, it was a partisan for Republicans to Democrats, but it wasn't necessarily anti the concept of it. But some of the folks in the school entities think that any time you're taking any money from the state school aid formula, it's a bad thing to do, regardless of the whole overarching premise of equity. So I think that was the rationale behind the vote.
These weren't the two guys with the anti-dog barking bill, really?
No dog barking or anything like that. So
all right, just wondering. Talking about bills that on the surface look like they're really not much, but if you think about it, are gigantic. And this is a bill that you're looking at right now with the Pollinator Health Advisory Council.
Right.
Because we got a problem in this state that nobody seems to want to take seriously.
Well, it's really important. Michigan honeybees they've been crashing at an alarming rate for the last decade or so. My bill, it's a bipartisan bill, along with Tom Cochran from Mason, essentially is going to create a Pollinator Health Advisory Council. We've got to do something to make sure we have healthy bee populations in the state. I mean, everything, especially this part of the state with the fruit crops and everything, but I mean, lots of other crops depend upon pollinators, and it doesn't necessarily stop at bees, butterflies, any animal, insect, whatever that's going to do the pollination process is certainly valuable to what we have from an economic standpoint, from agriculture, and the price of our food products.
Yeah, not to mention honey production and
like honey.
And the fact that these bees, as bees go, are I mean, I'll tell you what, there's a wasp nest out behind my house right now. They're not long for this world, But if it was a honeybee nest, I'd probably be calling somebody saying, how can we move these out? Because I do not kill honeybees, or for that matter, bumblebees.
Right.
But yellow jackets, and I guess it's terrible that I discriminate like that, but I do. But we have got to do something about this, not just in Michigan, but certainly in Michigan.
Yeah, it's a critical thing for our economy. It's just an attempt to bring everybody together that has an interest in it, be it the DNR, the Ag Department, farm organizations, pesticide applicators, environmental folks, local government folks, anybody that has an interest in preserving and promoting honeybees and other pollinators, just to say, okay, what kind of solutions can we come up with to make sure that we're sustaining these colonies and growing these colonies? Again, it's not like some major issue, but it's one of those things in life that really, if you don't address it, can really have a major impact on our lives.
Yeah. State Representative Dave Maturen is our guest this morning. Dave, we were talking about a grant, I guess it's a grant, $50 million allocation to the Natural Resources Trust Fund for 131 recreational development and land acquisition projects across the state, and 2 of them are here in our area.
Right, they're on the near the Albion area, Albion Township, Albion City. One of them is for a 65-acre parcel of land in Albion Township, ultimately going to be developed as into a major trailhead and for public recreation areas in eastern part of the county. $232,000 for that. It's also going to be part of the Iron Bell Trail, which is people aren't familiar with that trail. It's called Iron Bell because it goes from Belle Isle to Ironwood. So you can walk from Detroit up to the Upper Peninsula.
Holy cow.
On a single trail. So it's quite an undertaking. A lot of the portions of it have been purchased, but there's still bits and pieces that need to be connected. And the other grant for $255,000 is Albion River Trail expansion. And again, it's being organized by the Calhoun County Trailway Alliance, the Greenways Alliance, and the DNR to, again, expand recreational trail opportunities in the eastern part of Kalamazoo. Calhoun, let's get it right. They both start with Cal. One's a K-A-L, one's a C-A-L, and this would be Calhoun County. So.
Well, and it, certainly it helps us in trying to attract tourism, people who like to do that sort of thing, as well as our own state in recreation, gives us some stuff to do.
Well, exactly, and it's also that's the Iron Bell Trailhead is going to actually be done in conjunction with the Albion College's Equestrian Center. So it's something that will be a nice fit there over at the college. So
we recently heard that you will have a challenger in the upcoming primary in August. That was kind of unexpected, I think, because we hadn't heard anything for a long time.
Yeah, I'll actually have two challengers. One filed quite a long time ago, and the other person filed a few days or a few hours before the filing deadline. So just gearing up my campaign for my potential third term in the House of Representatives, and just takes time to get yourself organized and do everything you got to do to hit the campaign trail.
So you've been through two campaigns.
I have, yes, for state representative, and before that, of course, Kalamazoo County Commissioner, and before that, Township Trustee. So.
Yep. So you have to knock on doors. Do you do that?
Knock on lots of doors. Yeah. Yep. I'll probably lose a few pounds this spring, summer, so it won't be all that bad. And get outside and meet lots of constituents, listen to their concerns, see what's happening in the 63rd district, and see if there's other things I can do, like the legislation I've been successful in passing and co-sponsoring in the past 3.5 years. See if there's something else that arises that I can help folks out with the state government.
Well, if you had to focus on, like if somebody said, well, what have you done and what will you do? What's your philosophy in being a state legislator?
Well, I think probably people say, what's the thing you're most proud of? And I just think it's the constituent service that my office has provided to lots of folks. I have two really good staff members, Sherry Sophia and Jody Clark, and they're really good at handling constituent issues. Sometimes it's a little difficult to just wind your way through the maze of state government, and they know how to kind of cut through the red tape and get folks get questions answered and try to make their lives just a little bit simpler.
Yep. One of those bills, I forgot to mention this, a bill recently introduced to exempt seasonal docks from property taxes. What's that about?
Well, it was brought to my attention by a fellow state representative. One of his constituents said that his property tax assessment, they told him at the board review that his assessment went up because of his dock. And I, of course, was in that business for a long time. I know lots of assessors, lots of folks in local government. I'd never heard of anybody ever putting a seasonal dock on the property tax roll. It's personal property. It's pretty obvious. But there is a revenue bulletin of 2016 that talks about putting on the ad valorem tax roll seasonal docks. So this particular bill will essentially call them personal property, will be exempt from a property tax assessment. And, we got lots and lots of lakes in the 63rd district, lots and lots of people just like me that put their dock out every spring and take it into the fall. And it's not a fixture. It's not real property, and it shouldn't be assessed. And so that bill is going to make sure that regardless of how you read that revenue bulletin of 2016, that everybody knows unequivocally that is not part of your property tax bill.
Kind of a small thing, but only fair, I guess.
Well, and that's certainly an area that I've got a lot of expertise in, having been involved in the valuation business now for about 5 decades in one shape or form or another, and It certainly helped me craft legislation to, again, help homeowners who lose value in their property from paying a real estate transfer tax. It helps farmers when property transfers. I got a bill in to make sure that the value didn't get uncapped and watch their assessments go up 3, 4, 5 times when the property transfers. So I like to put my experience, that I've gained over the years in the private sector to work for folks in the 63rd District and statewide.
Well, and I've heard from more than one person in Lansing that you are certainly one of the top go-to guys when it comes to taxes and property valuation and all of these very complicated issues that people go up to Lansing without understanding, and they need some help. And I guess it's good that we've got a guy that has good experience in that area.
There's a bill introduced to deal with reforming the assessment process, and it just got introduced last week, and I will be examining that very closely. I know a lot of my local government friends are really concerned about the direction that this bill wants to take the state of Michigan relative to property tax assessments.
We'll talk about that next time. State Representative Dave Maturen, 63rd District here in Michigan. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.